Okay, ma'am. So, good evening, all. Myself, Simulia, Assistant Professor, and very much happy to be called the Sub-Coordinator IPWC Puducherry. It's my pleasure to be the moderator of today's session. First of all, I wish to welcome all the aspiring participants to the wonderful meet. On behalf of IEP State Branch, UTF Puducherry, and State Aids, Dr. Supriya K. Vinod, President, IEP State Branch, UTF Puducherry, Vice President Dr. Kalishwaran, IP State Secretary Dr. Mogan Raj, IP State Treasurer Dr. Balu, and IP Women's Cell Puducherry and its coordinator Dr. Yashoda Bande, State Coordinator Dr. Abhirami, Joint Coordinator Dr. Serenia, Sub Coordinator. I once again welcome you all to this meet. I also like to thank and be grateful to our national aides for making this to happen. That too exclusively, we are happy to mention and thank them for bringing up with an amazing idea of IEP India YouTube channel with live streaming. So we hope it definitely acts as a bridge of knowledge between the budding physios and all excellent professionals to exchange their valuable information. So I kindly request all the participants to subscribe our IP India YouTube channel in order to be notified, and also you can get to know about all the informative webinars in near futures as well, and also have a happy qualitative learning experience. And I also wish to introduce the panelist for this session, that is President IP State Branch, UTF Puducherry, Joint Coordinator IPWC Puducherry. Now I request Dr. Supriya K. Vinod, President, IP State Branch Puducherry, to welcome the speaker.
Thank you, Dinju. A very good evening to all the participants, the speaker, the panelists, and the technical support team from IIP India. A very good evening to all of you. It's my pleasure and a privilege to welcome Dr. Narasimhan Swaminathan to this wonderful session on cardiopulmonary physiotherapy, the need of the hour. Many of us would have gone through, many websites have gone through, we are in and out with social media, and we know that we are into a lot of webinars too. So earlier in a webinar, I had already told that when you have your platter full, you are at a loss on what to pick up. So when too much information is there, when there's an overload of information, it becomes the individual's discretion and intelligence that helps him pick up what is best for him. So for that, you need to have an orientation on what is the best. And who else but an apt person like Dr. Narasimhan Swaminathan, who is the professor and vice principal of an esteemed institution like Sri Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education, Chennai, to be the speaker for today's session. So thank you, sir, for accepting the invite. I had invited him just over the phone, and this was following a webinar which he had done on curriculum reformation for IAP South Zone. So having been very impressed by your wonderful presentation on that day, I thought you should come in and speak about the subject too. So I wanted you here for this topic, and I was very happy that you could accept immediately and spare your time for this event. I also thank the entire team of IIP Puducherry State Branch and the IIP Women's Cell Puducherry for their continuous and untiring support in organizing such webinars. This is our 6th consecutive webinar. So thank you entire team that has been supporting us. Thank you IAP India. Thank you the National President of IAP, Dr. Sanjeev Jasar, and the National Secretary, Dr. Annamalai sir, and the National Treasurer, my dear Ruchi, for always being there for us and for giving us this platform to conduct this program. This is our first on IAP India platform. So thank you each and every person who's made this a reality, and which without much ado, I would pass on the session to the speaker to start his talk.
Before that, I would like to take up some time to introduce the resource person for today's session, who's an eminent speaker and an excellent professional, He was awarded with International Fellowship in Advanced Medical Education and Research in the year 2012. He has done with many funded projects related to lifestyle disorders and physical activities. He is an ever active researcher who has done many publications, especially in peer-reviewed journal, and won Laureate Research Publication Award in the year 2017. And also, our speaker is a member in Sri Ramchandra Center for Health Professional Education and extended his services as training the educators in digital teaching methods. Currently, pursuing his PhD studies in the field of health professional education and digital technology. He also holds an adjunct researcher status with University of South Australia and a visiting professor at Bournemouth University, UK. We are extremely glad to present a right speaker for a right topic on role of cardiopulmonary physiotherapy in critical care and evidence-based research. I would like to have an humble notice to the participants. Your mic, your chat box option, and your video are muted by the host. Till this session gets over, you cannot access any of this. So if you have any questions, kindly hold on. Just before the session going to get end, we'll open the chat box. You people can post it there and we can discuss it with the speaker and get it clarified. I hope you all will have a wonderful session today. So without any further delay, I would like to hand over this time to our speaker. Sir, it's over to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to interact with the people on this interesting topic. Hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Am I audible? Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So next 40 minutes or so, I would like to see, explain the concepts, the role of physiotherapy, cardiopulmonary physiotherapy in critical care. That's the objective of today's session.
Sir, one small request, sir. Can you make it a full screen, please?
It is. I am asked to do it as a, what do you call?
Oh, okay. Okay, fine, sir. I can.
PDF. That's what. You want me to go back to the PowerPoint? That's better for me also. Okay. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Fine. So the objective of this session, at the end of this session, the participants will be able to understand the importance of critical care physiotherapy. When I say critical care physiotherapy, it includes both cardiopulmonary, and you will be able to reflect the current practice. This one particular field, in 1999, by God's grace, I'm practicing, learned from eminent physiotherapists across the globe. But till today, we are in our infancy, not, in our country when it comes to cardiopulmonary physiotherapy. Probably we need some more time to rise to that level. So we need to reflect on the current practice. So that's the first step. We'll be able to move to the next level. And then you will be able to appreciate the evidence. That's very important now. We need to look for evidence. Evidence-based practice is very the key to success. I still remember in the year sometime back in 2010, I was given the chance of delivering the IAP's prestigious CP Nair oration. So my oration talk was towards professional autonomy. So when I was digging into that, one of the important aspects to reach professional autonomy is to put evidence into practice. If you see in our country as physiotherapy, we are doing so well, exceptionally well nowadays, but another important aspect, we need to integrate evidence. So this talk will be looking into the evidence. It's all based on the high quality of evidence and what research, small research we could do in these many years. I'll throw you a question, reflect. Suppose you have a 44-year-old male, he's a known case of COPD, he's admitted in a critical care unit following acute exacerbation. When you see this patient is tachypneic, but the patient is on NIPPV, non-invasive positive pressure ventilation. When you interpret his ABG showed respiratory acidosis. You know what is respiratory acidosis? The PaCO2 is more and the pH is less. Do you think physiotherapy is indicated? I don't think so. We'll get an answer, but Many of you will say yes or no. You reflect. Do you think physiotherapy is indicated? Okay, we'll keep it for last for the discussion. So that's the first case we are discussing today. So next patient we have. You see, this is a patient, chest X-ray of a 63-year-old male. He had a history of ischemic heart disease and a severe, heavy cigarette smoker. He underwent CABG, left inferior mammary artery graft to the left anterior descending coronary artery. This is the X-ray film taken on the second post-operative day. So you as a critical care physiotherapist, you're working with him on the post-operative care. So that's the X-ray, if you could see. Again, the question will be, do you think physiotherapy is indicated? So two different cases. One is a post-operative patient. The other is a patient with acute exacerbation. We'll come to this COVID a little later because there is no strong evidence what is our role in COVID in the ICU. We'll touch upon that later. But these two cases are the regular one. You need to reflect. If physiotherapy is indicated, why physiotherapy is indicated? We should not be a routine physiotherapist. Just go and give whatever, give your percussion vibration and come back. That is not physiotherapy. I still remember some time back, here I would like to recognize my previous institute where most of my work in the ICU was from Father Miller's Medical College, Mangalore, where I started my career. So one day I got a complaint from my cardiothoracic surgeon. He called me and he said, the nurse complained you didn't give physio to my post-operative patients. I was, we as a team, we wondered, and I asked the nurse, so why didn't you comply? You see the documents, we did everything. You know what the nurse said? So we didn't hear the sound of your clapping. So in general in ICU, people think if physiotherapy means, making the sound, clapping, percussion. That's the way we need to reflect, but that is not physiotherapy. That's the time we documented, we showed everything to the surgeon and, he realized what is physiotherapy and then, we could work very well along with the team. So all my talk today is based on this paper we recently published. We reviewed all the evidence and we also looked into the context of developing country, Indian context. This is a free article you could download or you can approach, we'll be able to send. So today's whole talk based on this review, which is published recently in 2019. Fine. So when we come to physiotherapy, the role of physiotherapy, there are three major roles in physiotherapy, especially in the critical care unit. From the beginning, it is the retention of secretions. Because of the retention of secretions, there is impaired gaseous exchange, and then the patients develop respiratory muscle weakness. This is from the pulmonary side. This is what from the beginning till today, most of our physios across the country are focusing. But physio is more than that. We'll see this basic concept and then we will go to the next level. So what happens? Why this retention of secretion? That's a big problem because the patients are mechanically ventilated. So their physiological mechanism is affected. So they will not be having the normal physiological mechanism. Their upper respiratory tract is bypassed. So they will have humidity deficiency. Because of these factors, if you see, they have the physical mechanism is affected. They also have an underlying disease process. The artificial airway is in place. They do have impaired airway clearance. So that leads to retention of secretions. So first point, as a respiratory physiotherapist or critical care physiotherapist, we address the retention of secretions. So what it does, if there is retention of secretions, what it does, it leads to airway obstructions, and then it will affect the ventilation perfusion match. It leads to ventilation perfusion mismatch. You know that physiologically VVQ matching, that will lead to hypoxemia. So our role becomes mandatory here, especially when the patient has retention of secretions. So we need to assess and identify, that is what very important. You need to see how much does retention of secretions affects the physiological parameters, how much it affects the respiratory function, how much it affects the vital. a decision based on that. It is not that all the patients require physio. You know, sometimes because of physio, if you're giving physio without indication, we may put undue stress on the recovering physiological system. So your clinical decision making is very important. You know, we should not be overdoing the things when we are in the critical care. So what physiotherapy can offer? So physiotherapy has many, you know, techniques to improve the V/Q match. Now what we are seeing is return of secretions. That's a major goal. Why I want to talk about this, as I told you, till today people think physiotherapy means going into the ICU and giving percussion. So that is not physiotherapy, it's more than that, to tell you. So the main thing physiotherapists, what they are using is positioning. As a movement expert, by understanding the physiology, by understanding the gravity, we are an expert to position the patient along with the ICU team. So there are 5 positions we use in the critical care: upright, supine, lateral, prone, and head down tilt. You know, these positions can do wonders. By assessing the patient's respiratory parameters, you will be able to take a decision. But based on the minimal evidence, we should understand every position has some advantage and some disadvantage. So what are that? If you see the upright position always improves lung volumes. It also decreases the work of breathing. So keep that in mind. That's what the evidence says. If your objective is to improve the lung volume, now you apply to the second case. If you see the second case, post-operative patient, if you see the X-ray, the patient developed atelectasis. So the lung volume is reduced. So my goal is to improve the lung volume there. The lung volume is reduced, maybe because of retention of secretions also. But if my objective is to increase the lung volume, I have to select upright positioning. So your clinical decision making is very important. Not all the patients, you cannot have the same protocol. It is not that one size fits all. We should keep it in mind. It applies everywhere in physiotherapy and especially in critical care physiotherapy. If you want the work of breathing is to be reduced, again, upright positioning. Especially, you know, when the patient is getting weaned up from the ventilator or the patient's work of breathing is more, think of upright positioning. Because the reason behind us, you know, biomechanically, upright position puts the respiratory muscles in all advantageous position. So physiology, application, that's what important. Your application is very important. Don't be a, just go and do as a routine. Analyze every patient case by case. Next comes the lateral position. When we say lateral position, right lateral or left lateral. So these two lateral positions improves the V/Q match. Suppose your goal is to improve the V/Q, especially unilateral lung disease. The patient's ABG is not improving. So that is the time you need to put the patient in lateral position. And then your goal is to clear the airway or clear the secretions, again, lateral position. Just giving percussion in supine lying is not going to produce any effect. We are just going inside and doing for the sake of doing. Please keep that in mind. That's what the evidence says. Even we also identified in our practice. So the airway clearance is important because of the lateral position. You need to select, you need to identify the position. So that is how we should take our decision. Prone position. It improves the V/Q matching. It redistributes the edema. At the same time, it increases the functional residual capacity. Coming back to COVID situation, this is what applied. When we got a couple of papers, case series published from Italy, because they are the one, they got this COVID, number of ill patients were more, that what is happening now. So they worked with these patients and they documented prone position. Of course, prone position is to improve the V/Q matching. So in our practice in ICU, whenever there was a patient with ARDS, we were called for prone positioning. So again, there may be a question, why physiotherapist? Because of the knowledge we have about the joints and the movements and biomechanics, you will be able to help, you will be able to take a lead in the team while positioning. Of course, physios alone cannot do it, it's a team. Again, you should understand ICU is a teamwork. we a team member, we are playing a crucial role as a team member in the ICU. So prone ventilation or prone positioning is also very important. Of course, there are some contraindications. We should be careful. If the patients meet the criteria, you can go for prone position. The next one is head down tilt. You know, when we looked into some of the surveys conducted in India, we also conducted some of the surveys. So seldom our physios going for airway, head down tilt in the ICU. So if you're not going for head down tilt, you are not going to drain the secretions, especially from the lower zone. You know the gravity, postural drainage. The principle of postural drainage is using the gravity. With the help of gravity, we are draining the secretions. You know, if you remember, when you learn postural drainage, in the olden days, our teachers used to, teach us why are the postural drainage using a tomato ketchup bottle. You know, if the ketchup is small, what do? You tilt the ketchup according to it, and then, that's how that was a example given. So unless until you are not going for a head down tilt, you are not going to clear the secretions. Because the documentation is very important in the ICU. Immediately after physio, what the vital change, how the vital changes. Before giving physio, what is the vital status? You need to compare. These positionings are safe. The evidence says it's safe, provided the therapist is having the appropriate clinical reasoning skill. Okay, again, you need a team to do all the positioning. So coming back to postural drainage, there are 11 positions and 14 segments to drain. We opt in ICUs. It says postural drainage enhances the peripheral airway clearance. Because till today we don't have a strong evidence, but there are minimal evidence in this. It also increases the functional residual capacity. It improves the VVQ matching, and it also increases the thoracic compliance. But there are evidence which says, I put a cross mark over there. You can see, till today in our setup we consider postural drainage as gold standard, but there is no evidence to consider postural drainage as a gold standard. There are other techniques better than postural drainage to remove the secretions in the ICUs. So there are evidence which says there are poor practice techniques. There is no uniformity. There is no uniformity in postural drainage. When I gave an example, you reflect on the practice, how many times you position the patient in the left lateral or right lateral or prone or head down tilt while giving postural drainage. We, most of the time the therapist goes and the patient in the supine, and you give your percussion on the apical zone or on the basin. So that is not going to be useful. That's not the principle of postural drainage. We should be very careful. That's what it cannot be considered as a gold standard. There are poor practice techniques and then minimal documented evidence for postural drainage. So what other techniques we can use for airway clearance? Again, coming back to the chest wall manipulations, some of the papers which is published, I gave you the reference there. Percussion vibration, as I told, there is no uniform practice. There is no documented evidence. There is no well-structured or well-designed randomized control trial which says percussion vibration is effective. These techniques are not much used in developed countries. I had opportunity to observe critical care physiotherapy in a couple of developed countries. These techniques are very minimal, or not much in use. They're not using this. We should keep it in mind. But till today, you please reflect what type of practice we are doing. Fine. Then comes to the other technique. Again, very minimally used technique across physios in our country. That's what some of our surveys found. Manual hyperinflation. So if you're using it's fine. Manual hyperinflation, where we are providing, the tidal volume, a larger tidal volume, more than the 150% of the ventilator tidal volume what is set. We can use manual rebreathing bags or Maplin's C circuit. So with a flow of 15 liters per minute, that is what we are using. That's what first published paper. So what we do here, there's a slow deep inspiration followed by an inspiratory hold and then quick release. So what this does, this mobilizes the secretions. The secretions are moved from the peripheral airway to the central airway. From there, you'll be able to do the suctioning and remove the secretions. So this is what the circuit we were using in our ICU system, Maplin circuit. You'll see it's a valve. This valve will allow you to adjust your expiratory flow. You'll have the oxygen bag, and then that is connected to the oxygen. Then you can use this. Okay, so manual hyperinflation. Fine. It has its own indications and contraindications. That itself, we need to understand. This is another paper for you to refer. These are all this paper clearly explains the risks and benefits of manual hyperinflation. Sorry. Yeah. So before going to the next technique, when it comes to the airway clearance, we discussed now the postural drainage, and positioning is very useful. Postural drainage need more evidence. Manual hyperinflation seems to be effective in some of the patients. So then I didn't discuss in detail about suctioning. Of course, suctioning is also a part. After any of the positioning, you need to do the suctioning. There are proper guidelines that has to be followed. Again, suctioning has to be done as a team. Immediately after your physio, if you're not doing suctioning, it's waste. So you need to call the team, the nurse, or if you're practicing suctioning, yes, go ahead, and you should follow the guidelines. There are guidelines available, even starting from the suction catheter size and the pressure. Reflect all these questions. What should be the suction size? What should be the depth of insertion? How long you should hold it? Okay, so these questions, you take, what should be the suction pressure for adult? Are you checking the suction pressure daily, every time when you are doing the suctioning? How many suction passes are allowed? Can you, remove the patient with a high P from the ventilator for doing suctioning? Now there are two types of questioning, open and closed suctioning. So which is better? Reflect on that, because that itself will take more time. That's what I thought. We will keep it aside. We'll keep it parking. You should reflect on that. So suctioning is also, because, some of the hospitals suctioning is done only by the nurses, and some of the hospitals physios also doing. So if you are doing, see you are practicing the proper guidelines. That is very important. So next, after airway clearance, the role of physio is also in inspiratory muscle training. Some of the evidence came, piling up. Especially after secretions, if you see the respiratory muscle weakness, especially when the patient is in the mechanical ventilator for a longer time, respiratory muscle training may be useful. After weaning also, especially the patients with the tracheostomy and other things. You could see this is one of the power breather which is available. You could see some of our patients, high-level spinal cord injury patients, we were training them, using inspiratory muscle training. So try these techniques, but make sure that you are trained and your clinical decision making is proper. This works. There is a protocol how you will increase the threshold, how you will put the resistance, how you will increase the resistance, all those things. So inspiratory muscle training. In our experience, we know, we had a case report that was in 2009 when we tried. That was a patient. Weaning failure was there. GBS. Person, and when we tried with the inspiratory muscle training progressively, we could wean faster. Then that time onwards, we started getting reference. Especially when the patients were in difficult weaning, we started trying inspiratory muscle training. But there are some amount of evidence, systematic reviews are available, which says inspiratory muscle training could be used judiciously. There is another study what it was one of our therapist research, what we did at inspiratory muscle training to improve the respiratory muscle functions in patients those who are undergoing CABG, especially those who are at risk. We could demonstrate inspiratory muscle training seems to be effective. Okay, so very important point. Coming to the important point, what is the role of a physiotherapist? Coming to the very, very important point. The role of physiotherapist is more than airway clearance. Globally, what physios are doing. Physios are accepted as an integrated part of ICU. There are plenty of evidence. Round the clock physios. Even in some of the developed countries, if you see, physios are acting as the registrars of the critical care unit. Because of the knowledge and skills what we acquire, we have a major role there, especially when we start practicing this. We should understand bed rest is not benign. That's what the evidence, more than airway clearance or more than anything, what we have, our role is as a movement expert of the ICU team, early mobilization. That's the key for the people, those who are in the ICU. You should keep that in mind, early mobilization. So what are the effects of early mobilization? Very well said by Elizabeth Dean. You'll see this particular interesting paper. You can refer all these things, beautifully written, and she documented everything. What are the effects of immobilization? When the person is immobilized, the first thing which is happening, aerobic deconditioning. There is neuromuscular inactivity, that, and then the respiratory muscle weakness, fluid volume redistribution, and then psychosomatic abnormalities. So, immobilization, to counteract immobilization effect, mobilization. So, who is the movement expert in the ICU team? It is the physio. Physio is called movement expert. So, based on our background, so we should lead the early mobilization. So that is what's happening in the developed countries. So your key, what the evidence is, early mobilization. We should move towards early mobilization. So what are the benefits of early mobilization? Before that, again, a little in depth. This ICU immobility lead to deconditioning. Why? There are enough evidence which says there is something called functional denervation of the muscles, of the anti-gravity muscles. And then what happens, there is accelerated proteolysis in the anti-gravity muscles. That also leads to secondary atrophy. So there are various multiple factors which leads to deconditioning. So that is the area where we as a physio comes into picture. Okay, so now when you see that, when we mobilize, when to mobilize, that's the question comes in. Based on the evidence you look for, when you can mobilize, when the patient is conscious, alert, oriented. See, mobilization means it is not making them run or, walk. Even positioning is also a step of mobilization. We'll see that when we proceed. And then you should make sure patients are having hemodynamically stable parameters, cardiovascular parameters. And then you need to also assess the musculoskeletal and neuromuscular and surgical things. They should be ready. With fracture immobilization or a fracture spine, they are stabilized. You will not make the patient upright immediately, unless until it is indicated. So that is very important. So again, I bring in the outcome measures. That is what your expertise comes in. So your assessment starts here. You need to know the conscious level. You need to see, you need to use a better outcome measure. Now we started developing a specialized cardiopulmonary physiotherapist. So as a postgraduate or a specialist, you need to see what tools I can use. You need to be familiar with all these tools. Okay. And then again, the hemodynamic parameters, how I'm going to calculate, what is the cutoff? When should I mobilize? You need to look into the evidence, and we need to create our evidence, because our practice is not same like the developed countries. So we need to go into all the aspects. We need to have our own outcome measures in future. So now we need to look into the outcome measures, whichever is available. We should start document all these aspects so that I will be able to mobilize the patient better. So what are the acute physiological effects of mobilization? It is documented that early mobilization has effect in all the systems. In respiratory systems, mobilization improves the respiratory mechanics. It improves the gaseous exchange. Very important. Critically ill patients, they will have the impairment in the respiratory system. When it comes to circulatory system, again, the early mobilization is also increasing the cardiac output. It increases the cardiac output. It also improves the peripheral oxygen extraction. Very important. Because when we saw the deconditioning, the patients has a deconditioning. So early mobilization is also improving the peripheral oxygen extraction. When it comes to nervous system, it improves the arousal level. And then it is also improving the mental function. So these are all documented. Other side, it increases the release and redistribution of catecholamines. It also increases the renal function by improving the glomerular filtration. It will also improve the gut mobility. You see, all the system is getting a benefit from the early mobilization. Why? Because of gravity. Gravity is a boon. Physiotherapy should use the gravitational force, physics. So it also increases the cutaneous circulation. So enough of evidence. So for further understanding, if you want, look into this issue. It is published in Critical Care Clinics in 2007. The whole series is about the critical illness, how early mobility can be useful. You see, that's a safety issue. Kathy Stiller's first paper about the safety issue in mobilizing the critical care, transforming ICU culture to facilitate early mobility. This is in 2007. So after that, lots of randomized controlled trials published in this area. There's a promising evidence. Again, I will tell, one of the important area where physios can be useful, can lead is early mobilization. When it comes to critical care, even when we come back to the COVID, we'll understand that what physios can do. Fine. So again, that's what, this particular issue, probably, if you're interested, you note down, it's 2007, 23 issue. The whole issue is about early mobility. So whatever I spoke, the evidence at the cellular level is published. It's 2007, 13 years back, but the evidence based on this randomized control trial started, and we have systematic reviews and meta-analysis coming up, and we have strong evidence for early mobility. Early mobility is safe also. Fine. So this is the first protocol published by Kathy Stiller. She prepared a kind of a protocol. If you see this protocol, it is very rigid. Beautiful step-by-step protocol. It is very rigid, and this is the way the patients has to be mobilized. So I had an opportunity to interact with her when I was in Adelaide. I just mailed her, I want to meet you because, she readily accepted. That's the area where she's working. That's Kathy Stiller. Today, whatever I'm doing in early mobilization, I owe everything to, Kathy Stiller, because for inspiring. That is the first one, the early mobility she started using, and now everybody is using. If you see now, based on the evidence, we prepared a protocol for our setup. We consider all the evidence. We prepared a protocol because, our system is totally different. The documentation is different than the developed countries, and our role is different. Our team, how they perceive us, is different. So based on this, in the year 2014, we created 2012. Yeah, 2012, we created a protocol, stepwise protocol, and then we validated it. We modified it accordingly. So what we did, of course, based on the evidence, based on the Kathy Stiller's protocol and the other evidence. First thing is, we also published this protocol. I'll come to the publication a little later. The first thing is, first step, you need to review the medical background. So very important. That's what the knowledge for about the medical condition for physiotherapists is very important. That's the reason. When we were students long back in 1995, we were given more importance there. Now we understand why that we are applying it over here. So review the medical background. First thing, check the cardiovascular status. The resting heart rate should be less than 50% of age predicted, 220 minus age. Look for the BP. BP variability within 1 hour or within 2 hours should be less than 20%. Look for ECG. So that is what your knowledge about ECG reading is important. As a postgraduate specialty student, or if you're working in the ICU, you should have basic knowledge of ECG reading, because the patients should not have any arrhythmias or ST segment changes when you're mobilizing. If no, stop there. Stop there. The patient is not ready for mobilization. If yes, you can proceed further. Next step, look for respiratory rhythm. So you cleared the medical background, you cleared the cardiovascular status. Then look for the respiratory rhythm. Look for PaCO2, PaO2 FiO2 ratio. Should be more than 300. You will see where to get FiO2. FiO2 setting in the ventilator if the patient is ventilated. or how much oxygen the patient is getting, and then the PaO2. Calculate that. The SpO2 should be more than 90%. You should be very clear. SpO2 is different than PaO2. SpO2 is monitored by using the pulse oximeter. Again, reflect the difference between SpO2 and SaO2. SaO2, SpO2, PaO2. Please reflect and see. You should know the difference when you are working in the critical care. Of course, it's a basic thing. And then, the SpO2 should be less than 4. The decrease in the SpO2 should be less than 4%. That's what the paper published by Anne Prem. We'll show the reference a little later. And you should also note down the respiratory pattern. The patient should not have any disturbed respiratory pattern. What I mean, the tachypnea or altered breathing pattern and all those things. Then the patient should be able to maintain the mechanical ventilation. Very important. The parameter. If yes, consider the next step. So now this is step 3. If yes, consider the next step. Or no, stop it over here. So stepwise, that's the protocol we followed. It worked for us. Step 4, look for all other factors favorable. Even you should look for hemoglobin count. What is the platelet count? What is the WBC? Everything should be within the normal limit. If you have any doubt, consult the team member, consult the senior person available there. Then take a decision. If no, again stop. You see, anything no here also you are stopping. If yes, go to the next. Okay, fine. So again, even the mobilization, we put it as a phase-wise. Phase 1, what you do, first you start sitting with support. The patient sits with support, and then start with active exercises. That's what I told. The mobilization means it is not making the patient walk. It is also making the patient, changing the position is also called mobilization. So sitting with support, then start with active exercises, tolerable. So you started your mobilization. It is not that you are making the patient walk or stand. Once the patient is tolerating that, you're going to the next step, make the patient stand with support with spot marching, again, support with spot marching. You see, progressive. That is what we tried, again, based on the evidence we prepared that. Phase 3, standing with support, spot marching without support, then walking with minimal support. We could do this when the patient with mechanical ventilator also. We could prove that when we do this, the number of days the patient in mechanical ventilator is significantly reduced. At the beginning, we had a resistance from the medical team. Once we started proving it, there was an acceptance, and then they started. We consult the intensivist. If he gives the green signal, as a team, we started mobilizing. So we did it in our country itself. It is not from the developed countries. That's what I say. It's feasible, but it takes time. You need to build up the rapport and you need to show the evidence. So this is how you can see some of the pictures. So how the patient is made to sit with the ventilator. You could see the therapist is watching the monitor and other things. You could see again, stepwise, phase 1. The patient is ready to stand, and you could see the therapist is making the patient stand with the ventilator. You could see that is how that's how I'm not able to share the videos and some of the pictures. So you could see the phase 3. So some of the tools again to think of to use of this. This one simple tool we tried using, PFIT. So it's published by Bernie and a team from University of Melbourne. So you can also explore these tools. It also quantify how much the assistance the patient requires and the steps. You can document and you can progress based on this tool. So that is also possible. So that's a tool, and you will get elsewhere there. So that's the paper, what I said, when we did a small randomized controlled trial that was published in the International Journal of Health and Allied Sciences. What we did here, we had two groups randomly assigned, and the First group had 8 numbers immobilization. The second group was control group. The control group will receive the routine physio because early immobilization was not mandatory that time. So the routine physio, the position change and other things. You could see the comparison day. First out of bed. First out of bed, you see the day. The maximum days is here 4 and here it's 9. That's the cost per day in ICU. Okay, so if you could do that, how much you are helping the patient, and you're reducing the burden also. The other parameter, number of days of weaning. Of course, you see the number of days weaning maximum is 6 in early mobilization group, 9 in control group, and you could see the difference there. Of course, it's a small group, and we had lots of limitations because the homogeneity of the group is also. But we took all the patients with a respiratory failure, and then they are mechanically ventilated. It has its limitations, but again, we could prove. Why I say we could check this protocol, and it worked for us in our setup. Now then the early mobilization became a routine part of it. If you see this, the day of weaning, if you're reducing the day of weaning, the cost, we are going to cut the cost as a physio maximum. There are many people they are doing in our country also early mobilization, but it should be like based on the protocol, and it should be documented. When it comes to contraindications, yes, there are contraindications. We need to see the risk, the balance. If the risk is more, fine, don't do it. If less risk, if the benefit is more, then you should go for your technique or mobilization, because the patients are critically ill. You should be doubly careful. This is what I learned when I started picking up critical care physiotherapy from my senior physios. They used to say the word doubly careful. You should be doubly careful. But again, ICU is the place where you get all the parameters, the physiological parameters, and you have the team with you there always. So it's very easy for you to make your decision in consultation with them. Again, I stress it's a team care. Again, this was the European Society of Intensive Care Medicine position statement. You could refer this. They recommended what is the role of physiotherapy there. You could see that they're doing a wonderful job in European Union, especially when it comes to critical care. Okay. Now, again, these are some of the evidence. You could refer these papers. So coming back to the COVID. So when we are looking for the evidence, what will be our role? Still evidence are picking up. Some of the position statements are available. The position consensus statement, some published published in the Journal of Physiotherapy also, and now this is one thing from Italy. If you could refer that, I was very keen into see how the evidence is looking for. When I read this paper some 10-15 days back, they rightly said they were able to treat many number of patients. Based on that, they have given some recommendations. What they say: reduce unnecessary maneuvers, particularly procedures. What we discussed, the airway clearance and removing the patient from the ventilator because they require high PEEP. So they recommended avoid that. They recommended don't use the routine one. We tend to use all these diaphragmatic breathing, positive breathing, bronchial hygiene. They said don't use. Then what they recommended, again, if the disease progress is reduced, start early mobilization. That is what they recommended as a physio, as a respiratory physiotherapist. If you are working in the COVID ICU, your goal based on the disease progress, don't try anything unless until it is warranted. Consider early mobilization. That is what they say, because what is their experience when they started, doing all these things, they documented. That's what they recommended. Again, it's not a randomized control trial. It's based on their experience. When we do not have a randomized control trial, we see that's the level of evidence. So the physiotherapy practice is again, anything. It could be any specialty. You should take it. There are 4 cornerstones. Your knowledge and skills. Your knowledge and skills is very important, and the reasoning skills. you should be reasoning. That's the part which differentiates physiotherapy technicians and physiotherapists. If you're not able to reason out, if you're not able to use our the basic physiology and apply it, and still the autonomous practices, we need to consider the virtues, and the movement is the core for physiotherapy. That's for in general, that's what my core physiotherapy practice, that's what I teach my students, and I feel when I use this, I see I could be success. Fine. So what is the key to success in critical care physiotherapy? Your knowledge and skills, as I told. Develop your skills. You will not be becoming a specialist within a short time. It is not just completing a master's. You are expert. Till today, if you ask me, I'm developing my skills still. That is how it is. You need to keep practicing. The skills are very important. Your clinical decision making, reasoning, metacognitive skills, very important. Develop that. Discuss case discussions. Discuss with the team. Be a part of team. Discuss with your colleague. Till today, at least once a month, I discuss a case with my students who are abroad. They are leading critical care physiotherapists in some of the leading hospitals. Even we get to discuss. I get to discuss with them about COVID, because I'm not having an opportunity to handle the critical care COVID patients. I learn from them how they do that. So that is very important. Start discussing. Interprofessional relationship is very important. We also identified how the nurses perceive about us. You could see, we published that paper also, how the nurses perceive about it, how the other people perceive about it. It's very important developing the interprofessional skills in the ICUs. Of course, evidence. Create awareness. We need to create awareness among the medical professions, among the other professions, what we could offer. If we could show evidence, and then we pick up. That's our case, what I was discussing. That is what our practice, that helped us. So, any questions? Any questions?
Sir, there is a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
They're asking is there any handling position for mobilization, like in the question answer session? It's
okay, it's there in the Q&A. Okay.
Yes, sir.
What are the handling? What is that? Handling position? What do you mean by that? Handling position means?
I think they want to know how to handle positions while doing early mobilization.
Yeah, it's again.
That way, sir.
Yeah, okay. Again, first thing is, you should make sure that all the lines and tubes are secured. You should give utmost importance to lines and tubes. On monitor, you should always see that monitor and the facial expression of the patient. Again, which is important is, please mobilize the patient as a team. You will not be doing it alone. The team, the intensive care nurse, and then the other people should be there with you. It's a teamwork, but you will be leading as a movement expert. I hope I answered the question. Make sure that the lines and tubes are secured, and follow the protocol. You may develop your own protocol. This is the protocol what we followed based on the evidence. Hemodynamic parameters should be stable. Respiratory parameters should be stable. What precautions to take while mobilizing a patient with atrial fibrillation? Atrial fibrillation, deferred mobilization. That's what I said. The patient should be hemodynamically stable. Okay, start with the active exercises on the position. You see how the patient tolerates, and get the consensus, and then progress to the next mobilization. If risk and benefit is equal on mobilization, what can we do, sir? See, again, don't take risk. You see what is the benefit? What is your goal? Your goal is what? Why do you want to mobilize the patient? Take that. If it is life-threatening, you should not. That's what I gave you the paper which is published from the Italian respiratory physiotherapist. What they said, wait for the disease progress to stable, and then you mobilize. That is what important. That's what I meant, risk versus benefit. You should be judicious. You should be taking a decision based on that. Sometimes if you're not going to provide any benefit, why should you go and mobilize the patient? That is what your clinical decision making comes in. COVID early mobilization is the key. How to make a patient who is already breathless mentally ready for the same. Also, how can we improve his breathing on ventilation? So the ventilatory parameters, it has to be settling down. That's what ventilator is, a support. So it is again a teamwork, how expert you are in handling the ventilator. That's what the intensivist roles comes in. Sometimes to reduce their breathing difficulties, the patients may be sedated. That itself a big discussion. The patient may be sedated, or what is the ventilatory settings. Based on the parameter, you will make your decision. Again, as I told, it's not that one size fits all. It is based on the patient, case to case. If they are already breathless, you should not mobilize. Let the breathless settle down. You go back to the protocol which I said, the respiratory rate. If the patient is tachypneic, you will not even able to give active exercises. You should wait the breathlessness to come down. Maybe you can position, you can relax. If the patient is weaned off from the ventilator, once the breathlessness is reduced, and then you think of mobilization. What we don't mobilize the patient with the PEEP, because when the patient with the high PEEP, because if you disconnect, the PEEP itself will alter the hemodynamic parameter. So that is what you should be very careful. When the patient is with the high PEEP, hemodynamic parameter is affected. Okay, mobility mobilizes secretions and improves perfusion. Yeah, that is also gravity. Yes, Ramesh says that. What is the role of physiotherapy for ventilated patient in ICU after cardiovascular surgery? Again, the role is the same. Pulmonary complications you need to prevent. So once the pulmonary complications are prevented, you need to plan for, you can assist in early weaning also. If you are preventing the pulmonary complications, the patient will be able to wean off from the ventilator faster. Plan for early mobilization. Is it safe to mobilize patient with major surgery having 7 to 8 outlets? Yes, make sure the drains are secured. Have your team in place. Get the consent from the team, head of the team, and have your team in place. You could mobilize. We have done it in our experience, but again, the team matters. It is not only you are doing it, it's the team. Please keep it in mind. Again, I stress on that ICU mobilization, it's a teamwork. It is not only by the physio. Yeah, inspiratory muscle procedure explained. You have threshold devices. You will be able to, select that threshold based on that. And then you will progressively increase the threshold. So it is again, you need to see how much the maximum the patient can inspire. And based on that, you will progressively increase the resistance. It will be, it's a big, it's a procedure how you prescribe the exercises also. Any specific evidence-based device or aid which can be used for ICU patients to mobilize the patient if in safer way other than tilt table to avoid occupational hazard as LVA or other conditions. Okay, so you're talking about your occupational hazard. Yeah, there are lift pneumatic lift equipments are available. But if you as a movement expert, if you take the precautions, we mobilize the patients without any equipments, you will not develop LVA. But again, don't try to do it as a single person. The same point, all the questions, the answer is, it should be a team. One person cannot mobilize. If you use the right technique, I don't think you will develop occupational hazard. If you are allowed, if you are, have an opportunity to use the equipments. Yes, there are equipments, pneumatic lift equipments are available. You can use that also. Even the rotator beds also available. So that is also in some of the hospitals you could see they started using that. Can you explain physiotherapy to be given immediately after extubation? Yeah, immediately after extubation, you should see what is the problem the patient has. First thing, keep the patient in upright position. Observe the patient's breathing pattern. what is the breathing pattern. So that particular time, don't go for any active exercises, and see the patient's breathing pattern is normal. Rebreathing training is very important. Relaxed breathing is important. You may include, personal breathing. But one thing, immediately after extubation, the percussion vibration, don't try any of the maneuvers, as I told. Though there are not any evidence, people try that. That may also produce bronchospasm. So you should be very careful immediately after extubation. Easy to get, yeah, inspiratory muscle trainer. Yeah, now it is easy to get. It is available on the market. You will get it. Different companies are available. You will be able to get it what you want. Some evidence on physiotherapy, neonatal or pediatric ICU. I could see from Anandi. To tell you very frankly, there is very minimal evidence because except positioning, there is no much evidence in that neonatal physiotherapy unit. Maybe if you could share your email, I will be able to pass the articles to you, so you'll be able to read that. What is it? First two questions. I cannot get. I think we answered the first two questions. Yeah, so we explained the handling position. So handling position is we explained, and what precautions. Yeah, I think we explained that. I think you missed it. Atrial fibrillation. We explained that.
So there is also another question asked in a private chat box. It's like, if the patient is intubated, can we make them to opt for prone lying?
Yeah, with all intubations can be. Yeah, that's what you'll see that. Probably I didn't share you the picture. Yes, you can with all precautions. Yes, you can, because prone ventilation is the one. Now if you see COVID, prone ventilation is the one which is helping, especially when they develop severe this thing. Prone ventilation is the one which is helping. It is feasible. Again, that's a team. Your team has to be trained. We have practiced it. It is very much feasible. It is very much feasible. Okay, what immediately we can do if patient is desaturating when he is made to sit? Depends upon whether the patient is extubated or intubated. Well, for help, the nurse has to be called immediately. And if you are handling with a patient who is, immediately the oxygen has to be improved and reposition the patient. First thing, reposition the patient. From which position you made him sit, reposition the patient and document and observe. Sorry, suddenly I got some other disturbance and the Zoom message. So when the patient has to be observed and inform the team immediately. Again, please keep it in mind, you are not the sole person. ICU, we are a team player. We have a major role, it's there, but reposition the patient, observe, immediately inform. Yeah, any protocols? Yeah, there are a couple of protocols which are published. You could get it. Probably I will share that. One of the thing what I shared in the PowerPoint. There are another published in the journal Physiotherapy. It's all consensus statement. So there is no evidence-based protocol because still it is piling up. Name appropriate inspiratory muscle trainer. There are many companies. We cannot tell the companies. There are many inspiratory muscle trainers are available. You Google it, you will get it. It's available in Chennai also. There are threshold device and other devices are available. You select whichever you want. How to clear the secretions in case of positive COVID suspected patients. Yeah, you can use, if you are having any of the patients, those who are not ventilated, all your active techniques to be useful. But only thing, make sure when you are there, you are using all the personal protective equipments. Be careful when you are using all the techniques. Should be using. Again, there is no evidence on that. I would like to ask about the mobilization of a patient who had undergone tracheotomy. When can we? Again, see the protocol. Everybody is asking the same question. The protocol, if the patient is hemodynamically stable, the patient's respiratory parameters are stable, you can mobilize the patient. First step is that. Acute injury patient reduce conscious, okay? Shows consolidation. What kind of techniques I can use other than percussion? Yeah, manual hyperinflation is the technique, you know, that is very, that will be very useful in head injury patients. You can position the patient with the precautions, with a monitor support. Manual hyperinflation can be used. Yeah, neurosurgery patient, again, once the patient is stable, you see the parameters are within the normal limit. We can start from positioning as a stepwise. Okay, inspirated muscle training, important restrictive lung disease. Now, this scope is for critical care. Restrictive lung disease, again, there are mixed evidence. You may be able to use, but now this focus is only on critical care. So we'll take that. There is another. Yeah, what are the safe posterior positions after tracheostomy? You know, make sure the tracheotomy tube is not getting blocked. You can position in all the posterior positions. Only thing you should ensure the tube is not getting blocked. What airway clearance techniques can be given to a patient with rib fracture, sir? Yeah, rib fracture. You know, again, whether the patient is ventilated or not ventilated, that depends. Non-ventilated patients, all your active techniques, you know, in our experience, ACBT, especially with you know, if the rib fracture is stabilized, ACBT with increased breath hold technique seems to be effective. Again, what we understood, the people those who are using ACBT, they are not using the right technique. That's one of our survey finding. One of our PG did a survey, and we found that ACBT technique is not rightly used. You know, everybody use however they want. But if you use the breath hold technique more, that should be useful. If the patient has a pleural effusion and they were in ventilation, how the mobilizations are? You can mobilize, again, the parameters, you know, look for the parameters. If the parameters are normal, take a call with your team and you will be able to mobilize with the pleural effusion also. Make sure if the drainage tube is there, the drainage tube is in place. What else other than mobilization a respiratory physiotherapist can do for COVID? Yeah, that's the question. If you are, you know, I get lots of questions from anonymous attendee, but anyhow, that's nice. What is the role, you know, the positioning? That's what I would like to share the paper with you. You read the paper. Positioning can do wonders because positioning improves the V/Q matching. You can do positioning and you can start early exercises and early mobilization, especially when the patient are in the critical care. Is there any specific duration for giving physiotherapy in ICU? A wonderful question. Yeah, duration. That's the what. You know, is it necessary to give only half an hour or 1 hour? Please understand what is the need. If you are positioning the patient half an hour, after the positioning, what you would like to do? Secretions are removed and then your exercises. There is no standard duration. It is based on your clinical decision. You know, these are all, we should not have that cookie cutter, you know, like the recipe. ICU physio is not recipe. You know, sometimes you may have only 2 patients in your ICU referred. I still remember for the 2 patients, we spent more than 6 hours, you know, taking a break and going back. It depends. There is no cookie cutter recipe. That is what, if you see in the developed countries, ICUs will have a dedicated physiotherapist. You know, probably will take up until the patient comes under the criteria of early mobilization. What is the role of physiotherapy in ICU to bring the patient to that state? Yes, positioning. Prevent the pulmonary complications. Your role is there. You should make sure, you know, it is not that only mobilization. You need to prevent the pulmonary complications. How will you prevent the pulmonary complications? Positioning. If the patient requires, you know, again, don't take it away. The patient should not develop any contractures and tightness. That is our role. I mean, positioning, it is not only for airway clearance. You know, what about the joints? Who will maintain the muscle integrity? Who will maintain the joint range of motion? That is very important. You know, I didn't stress on that. That is mandatory. That is taken. You know, that is what we understood in our survey also. Most of the physios are comfortable in giving passive movements. But again, if you see, there is no evidence for passive movements. How many times you should give passive movements? But we need to maintain the muscle integrity. Beautiful. I agree with you. We need to maintain the muscle properties. We need to maintain the muscle integrity. But again, there is lack of evidence for that. Yeah. Somebody says VO2 max plays a major role. Yes, it's correct. What are the mobilization techniques we can give for 60-year-old female suffering from heart problem and diabetes? Okay, whether the patient can tolerate the mobilization. Start with positioning upright. You know, again, whether the patient is in the ICU, ventilator, what is the hemodynamic parameter, all these things. Again, that's what, please understand, one size will not fit all in the ICU. Okay?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
May I ask you a question?
Please.
Actually, as we see all the questions, one thing is very open that because of lack of experience and also evidence is available, they may have all these doubts. So is there any particular training do we therapists can have on regarding this particular area?
See,
because all students are asking that only. Because in all hospitals, patients are not available also. So they have that fear in handling the patient. They don't know how to progress on with that. So in which way we could help them, sir? It's my humble question.
There are videos available, what we created, videos available. They could watch the video, but again, if you see the education level, watching the video will come to only the observing level. You know, there are level of achieving the expertise. You know, first they should observe and they should do under supervision. That's what we call. They should know how, and they should show. They should show how. Finally, they should perform. You know, to become that perform level, I think that's what the postgraduate degree programs are helping them. You know, to become that's what I say. Till today, if you ask, I need to build up my skills. I will not say, you know, of course, it takes some time to become an expert. That is what it's very nice. They're ready to learn. First thing, you should be ready to learn. We should be daily learning. That's what I told you an example. Till today, I want to learn more about COVID, how the therapists are managing, because I'm not having an opportunity here. So I discuss with my students, those who are working with COVID. So the learning is a lifelong. It's nice to see too many questions. Probably we should have a breakup session, because I will not be able to give within 1 hour, because secretion clearance itself is a big thing. You know, when I talk about manual hyperinflation, as you rightly said, how to hold the ambu bag, how to connect, how to set the pressure, how to release it. You know, that takes time to build up. It is easy to say use ambu bag, use manual hyperinflation. You know, it should be built up. It's wonderfully brought out. It's wonderfully brought out. It's a step. You please have a inclination towards learning. You know, at least after this COVID era over, by this session, you know, the IIP Women Cells took a pain to organize this. The objective of this, at least 1 or 2 of you will go and start changing the position of the patient. That's a success. We cannot expect after 1 hour of lesson, you will be able to make the patient mobilize. It takes time. You know, so any doubts, I will share my email ID. Please post it. We are ready to work as a, we can start developing the things. Okay. Yeah.
I think, sir, we will answer the questions that are directed to you through the mail. So yeah. I think Dinju can arrange for this to be compiled and forwarded to you by email, so we don't lose much time. And
yeah, to summarize, I just take 30 seconds to summarize. To summarize, physiotherapy is an integral part of ICU. There are enough of evidence, no doubt. That's the scope. In future, you know, even in Indian ICUs, we are going to have a major role in helping the patients as a team. There are plenty of benefits. As I told, your knowledge, skills, and attitude, that's very important. Develop the attitude. We should work as a team. When you work as a team, you get the same reciprocal from the other team member. That is very important. Develop interprofessional communication. And then adequate evidence for early mobilization. It is safe, it is feasible, and it is cost effective. So with 1 hour, you will not become an expert. Please practice, as our moderator rightly said. You should build your expertise. So with that, I thank the organizer for this opportunity. So that's my email ID. If any queries, please feel free to contact and quote the reference that you are under this webinar. I will try to reply within 24 hours to 48 hours. With that, once again, I thank you, Dr. Supriya, for this opportunity to interact, and the IIP team. It's always happy to share and discuss. I also learned a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very comprehensive as well as an extensive explanation of the evidence-based practice, and of course on the early mobilization that is essential to bring a person back to his feet and normal. But I also feel that along with early mobilization techniques, specifically directed treatments, goal-oriented treatments for pulmonary problems, whether be it in the wards or in the ICU, can definitely reduce the number of days of stay that a person has to spend in the hospital. This has a very great impact on the psyche of the person too. And this in turn is a vicious cycle which will help in the recovery process. So this is something which we have all seen, and this is the best evidence available, that the moment you bring him back on his feet, he has the tendency to that he is going to go back home, and he has a feeling that he is going to live. Because many times in the ICU, we find people depressed, and we also find them with a feeling that they are not going to survive and they're going to die. So this feeling is always there for people who get into the ICU. So I think this also has to be addressed as a physio when they enter an ICU. And the next thing is, it is an integration of clinical reasoning, clinical decision making, and of course, clinical judgment that can make a person the best therapist. So there is no such, like you said, no one size fits all. Every treatment has to be tailor-made, has to be customized to your patient's needs. So this is where the patient values come in. And many times we find that somewhere in the arena where you would like to excel in your treatments, you lose the patient values. So always keep the person whom you're treating in front of you. Think of them as a person, as a human, and then start your treatments. This is the first message that a therapist has to take in when he goes into an ICU too, because that is an area where there is high risk and there is a lot of scope of infection too. So the number of days, if it is reduced in the hospital, the number of the chances of this person getting an infection from the ICU again is reduced. So that is again to be kept in mind for a chest physiotherapist definitely throughout his life if he is going to serve in the same area. And there were times when I had worked in the MMM, in the Madras Medical Mission in the early 90s. I found that those days it was a different scenario altogether. There were, of course, SOPs that were followed, and there were standard protocols given to the therapist there on how you should deal with cardiac surgery, how you should deal with pulmonary surgery. But there were also times when there were cases who had undergone CABG or valve replacements, and they used to come back with to the physiotherapy department, the cardiac rehab, with symptoms of neuropathy, compression neuropathies that have happened on the surgical table. So this is again something, this was new to us at those times. You only concentrate as a chest physiotherapist on the lungs, and you never even think about the other complications that can be associated, and something which doesn't come from your own area too. So the therapist, I feel, should have eyes and ears open to the person as a whole. So it should be a holistic approach that a therapist has to do if he needs to get the best evidence-based practice that is available, and which can definitely promote the health of his patient and for a better professional benefit. So thank you once again, sir, for that wonderful session that you had handled for us. A very extensive one. We have exceeded time, I suppose. Thanks to everybody who's been involved in this. IIP India, the entire tech team that has been working behind state branch of IIP Puducherry, the IIP Women's Cell Puducherry, and of course our Yashoda, who has not been able to join us here, but she has done most of the spade work and homework here to get this into a reality. Thank you, Richa. Thank you, Abhirami. Thank you, Denju. And of course, the entire team that is working behind the screen too. Thanks a lot to each and everybody here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. And I must thank the technical team, because without you, it is not possible at all. And I also thank all the, all the participants for your valuable time. And without any mention, I cannot leave our speaker. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for being patient to answer all the questions. So I hope you all once again meet in another webinar. Please subscribe IAP India channel so that you can get in touch with all the updated webinars. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Priya ma'am, Narasimha sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.